I was harassed by creepy men at the pool. Then one of them started drowning and needed me to save his life. I was doing warm-up laps at the community pool when a group of middle-aged men claimed the lane next to mine, immediately mocking my competitive one-piece swimsuit. They'd been day drinking and thought the pool was their personal entertainment venue. The loudest one, wearing board shorts with flames on them, whistled and said, "Hey, sweetheart, you know they make swimsuits that actually show your body, right? What are you, Amish?" His friend in the gold chain added, "She's probably hiding a terrible body under there. That's why they wear those things." They laughed and high-fived like they'd said something clever. I kept swimming, but they decided to follow me to each lane I moved to, waiting until the teenage lifeguard went on break to escalate. "Are you training for the nursing home Olympics?" Flame Shorts called out. "Real women wear bikinis. You look like you're going to a swim meet in 1952. When I didn't respond, he got louder. "I'm talking to you. Didn't your parents teach you manners? Or were they too busy making you dress like a nun?" Gold Chain decided to get in the water and swim directly behind me, trying to grab my ankle. "Just want to help your technique," he said when I pulled away. "You swim like you've never been in water before. All tense and frigid. I could loosen you up." His friends cheered from the side. She definitely needs a man to teach her how to move her body. When I got out to adjust my goggles, a third one with a beer gut blocked my path back to the pool. "Where are you going?" "We're just being friendly." He stood so close I could smell the beer. "You know, if you smiled more and dressed better, guys might actually want to talk to you. You're not ugly, just boring." He reached out and snapped my swimsuit strap hard enough to leave a mark. "See? Much better when it shows some skin." They started taking pictures of me without permission. "Gonna make a meme," Flame Shorts announced. "World's most uptight swimmer. Bet you're a virgin who's afraid of men." They gathered around showing each other the photos, zooming in on my chest and butt. "Look, you can almost see a shape if you squint. Maybe there's a woman under there after all." When the new lifeguard, barely 16, tried to tell them to stop, they laughed and said his balls hadn't dropped yet. A fourth friend showed up, already drunk, and they told him about the prude in the grandma suit. He walked over and poured his beer on my head. "Baptizing you into the fun club. Loosen up, betch." When I wiped my eyes, he said, "Actually, you look better all wet. Almost screwable if we put a bag on your personality." They all laughed and started rating what they'd need to change about me. Beer Gut decided to cannonball right next to me repeatedly, sending water up my nose and in my eyes. When I coughed and sputtered, they all laughed. "Can't even handle a little splash? Some swimmer you are." He did it harder each time. "Maybe if you wore appropriate pool attire, you'd be more fun. That suit is dragging you down, physically and socially." Flame Shorts grabbed my towel and threw it in the pool. "Oops, guess you'll have to get out all wet now. Let's see what that ugly suit looks like soaked." When I retrieved it, he held it underwater with his foot. "Come on, just take the suit off. We all know you want the attention. Stop playing hard to get. We're the only men here who'd even look at you." Gold Chain noticed my car keys on my chair and grabbed them. "Let's see what the prude drives. Probably a minivan like a soccer mom." He dangled them over the deep end. "Maybe if you give us a little show, take off that ugly suit, I won't drop these." When I reached for them, he threw them in the pool. "Fetch, girl. That's the most action you'll get all year." They howled with laughter as I had to dive for my keys. They formed a circle around me in the shallow end when I came back up, not letting me leave. Gold Chain reached underwater and grabbed my thigh. "Just checking if there's any muscle under there." "Nope, just soft and useless like the rest of you." Beer Gut pulled at my suit straps while another one filmed. This would go viral. "Prudish girl gets taught how to have fun at the pool. You're gonna be famous as the most boring woman alive." Flame Shorts pushed me hard against the pool wall. "You've been teasing us all day with your attitude. Acting superior when you're just a stuck-up bitch who can't get laid." He held me there while Gold Chain said, "Maybe we should teach her a lesson about respecting men who are trying to be nice. Show her what she's missing by being such a prude." "This is the kind of man you'll never get," Beer Gut said. And that's when he decided to show off with a running backflip into the deep end. Hit his head on the edge. The crack was audible. He went under and didn't come up, blood spreading in the water. His friends stood frozen. Gold Chain screamed, "He can't swim!" He was just standing in the shallow end the whole time. Flame Shorts jumped in but started panicking immediately, making it worse, thrashing and pushing Beer Gut deeper. I groaned, realizing it was going to be up to me to save this asshole as his friends started screaming for help. I pushed off the wall hard and dove straight down into the deep end where Beer Gut was already sinking toward the bottom. The water around his head looked pink from blood mixing with chlorine. Flame Shorts was right above him, thrashing around like crazy and actually pushing Beer Gut deeper every time he tried to grab him. I swam harder and reached them just as Beer Gut hit 12 feet down. Flame grabbed at my arm when I got close, but I shoved him away as hard as I could. "Get to the shallow end before you kill us all." He choked on water and started dog paddling away while I got behind Beer's limp body. The second lifeguard finally jumped up from his chair and started blowing his whistle over and over. He yelled for everyone to clear the deep end while grabbing the red rescue tube from its hook. "Someone call 911 right now!" He slid into the water as I hooked my arm under Beer's chin in the cross-chest carry I'd learned years ago. His body felt like dead weight pulling me down, but I kicked as hard as I could toward the surface. Blood from his head wound ran down my arm and turned the water pink around us. We broke through and I fought to keep his face above water while his head rolled back against my shoulder. The lifeguard swam over with the rescue tube and helped me start towing Beer toward the pool edge. Gold Chain and the fourth friend was standing there screaming at us to hurry up. They reached down trying to grab Beer, but I had to yell at them to back off. Let us get him positioned right first. The lifeguard and I worked together to lift Beer's body up to the deck without making his head injury worse. His breathing sounded wet and shallow when we finally got him laid out flat. The gash on his scalp was about 3 inches long and bleeding bad. I grabbed my soaked towel from where it had been thrown and pressed it against the wound while the lifeguard checked his pulse. Gold started yelling that this was all my fault. You distracted him with your stuck-up attitude. Other people who'd been swimming told him to shut his mouth. A woman who'd been doing laps in the far lane walked over with her phone out, recording everything. I'm Minnie Carroll, and I saw what these men did to you before this happened. She leaned closer and spoke quietly. I'll send you the video later. The lifeguard kept checking Beer's breathing while I held pressure on his head. Blood soaked through the towel fast and ran between my fingers. Beer's skin looked gray and his lips were turning blue. More people gathered around us and someone said the ambulance was 3 minutes out. Flame had made it to the shallow end and was coughing up water while the fourth friend helped him stand. They both looked scared now that their buddy was unconscious and bleeding everywhere. I could hear sirens getting closer and then paramedics rushed through the pool gate with their equipment. The lead guy took charge right away. I'm Elias Branson. What happened here? The lifeguard started explaining while Elias and his team got Beer onto a backboard. Attempted backflip from the deck, struck his head on the pool edge, unconscious in 12 feet of water for maybe 90 seconds. Elias asked me quick questions while they worked to stabilize Beer's neck and spine. Did you see the impact? Any seizure activity in the water? How long was he under? I answered as best I could while they put a collar on Beer and started checking his vitals. My hands were shaking now and I noticed the red marks on my arms where Gold had grabbed me earlier. The chlorine made them sting bad. Elias's team worked fast, getting an oxygen mask on Beer and starting an IV while asking everyone to step back. They lifted the backboard onto their gurney and started wheeling him toward the ambulance. Flame tried to follow, but Elias told him firmly to stay back. We need space to work. You can follow to the hospital in your own vehicle. The pool manager showed up looking stressed and started talking to his staff about collecting everyone's information. I sat down on a bench because my legs felt weak all of a sudden. Minnie sat next to me and showed me her phone screen. I got the Beer pouring and some of the grabbing on video. The audio is pretty clear too. She gave me her number so she could send the files later. Other witnesses were giving their contact info to the pool staff while Gold and the fourth friend huddled together near the fence. They kept looking over at me and whispering to each other. The teenage lifeguard who'd gone on break earlier came running back and his face went white when he saw all the blood on the deck. The second lifeguard filled him in on what happened while the manager started reviewing something on his phone, probably security footage. My whole body hurt from the adrenaline crash, and I could see bruises already forming on my thigh where Gold had grabbed me underwater. Flame stumbled toward the ambulance as they loaded Beer onto it, still drunk and trying to grab at the stretcher. Elias blocked him with one arm and told him to back off and let them work. The pool staff started moving through the crowd with clipboards, getting everyone's names and phone numbers for the incident report. Flame kept yelling that he needed to go with his friend, but Elias shut the ambulance doors in his face. The ambulance pulled away with its sirens going and Flame stood there looking lost. Jonas Schultz showed up then, the pool manager, looking stressed as he pushed through the crowd. He went straight to his office with 2 staff members and I could see them looking at something on the computer screen through the window. Jonas came back out and walked over to me, asking if I could please stay to talk to the police who were already on their way. I nodded and wrapped the dry towel tighter around myself, sitting back down on the bench. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of the red strap mark on my shoulder. The bruises on my thigh were already turning purple and I got those too. My ankle had finger marks where Gold had grabbed me underwater and the chlorine made everything sting worse. I took photo after photo, trying to document everything while fighting the urge to cry. Gold and the fourth friend was standing by the fence now, talking quietly to each other and looking over at me every few seconds. Other people who'd been at the pool were talking to the staff, and I could hear them describing what they'd seen. A woman told the lifeguard she saw them pour beer on my head. An older man said he watched them throw my keys in the pool. More witnesses kept coming forward with pieces of what happened before beer hit his head. Detective Shirley Potts arrived about 20 minutes later in an unmarked car. She had short gray hair and looked like she meant business as she walked onto the pool deck. She separated everyone right away, putting Gold and the fourth friend on opposite sides of the pool area. She had Flame sit on a bench far from them and told everyone not to talk to each other. Minnie walked up to the detective and showed her something on her phone. I could see Detective Potts watching the screen and her face got harder with each second that passed. She took out her own phone and had Minnie send her the video files right there. The detective wrote down Minnie's contact information and thanked her for the evidence. Then Detective Potts came over to me with a small recorder and asked if I felt okay to give my statement. I started from the beginning, telling her how they showed up drunk and started making comments about my swimsuit. I went through each thing they did, the whistling, the following me to different lanes, the grabbing, the pictures they took without permission. I told her about the beer being poured on my head and my towel being thrown in the pool. I explained how they threw my keys in the deep end and then trapped me in the shallow end. I described Gold grabbing my thigh underwater and Beer snapping my swimsuit strap. The detective took photos of all my visible injuries with her camera, getting close-ups of each mark and bruise. She told me I had a strong case for assault charges and gave me information about getting a restraining order. Jonas came over with his laptop and showed Detective Potts something on the screen. The security camera had caught a lot of what happened, including Gold grabbing me underwater and Beer snapping my strap. Jonas looked sick as he watched his own security footage and immediately said all 4 men were permanently banned from the facility. He started typing up the ban notices right there on his laptop. Flame saw the detective looking at the security footage and started walking over, saying they were just having fun and I was making a big deal out of nothing. Detective Potts cut him off and told him he was looking at assault charges and public intoxication at minimum. She said the video evidence was clear and multiple witnesses had already given statements. Flame tried to argue that Beer getting hurt was punishment enough, but the detective wasn't having it. She told him to sit back down and wait for her to take his statement. The whole process took almost 3 hours with all the statements and evidence collection. Detective Potts gave me her card with the case number written on the back. She said someone would follow up with me in the next few days about pressing formal charges. I finally got to leave as the sun was setting, walking to my car in a daze. My phone had blown up with messages while I was giving my statement. Minnie had sent me all the video files she took and her phone number in case I needed her as a witness. She'd also sent a text saying she was sorry this happened to me and that those men were awful. I sat in my car for a few minutes before driving, trying to process everything that had happened. My whole body hurt and I could still smell chlorine and beer in my hair. The drive home felt longer than usual and I had to focus hard on the road. When I pulled into my driveway, my hands were still shaking, so bad I could barely get the key in the door. I went straight to the bathroom and turned on the shower as hot as it would go, stripping off my still damp swimsuit and throwing it in the corner. The water burned my skin, but I scrubbed anyway, using half a bottle of body wash trying to get the feeling of their hands off me. I kept seeing Beer Gut's face going under the water, the blood spreading out like red paint. My shoulder had a purple bruise forming where the strap snapped, and my thigh showed finger marks from where Gold grabbed me underwater. I stayed in the shower until the water ran cold, then wrapped myself in my biggest towel and sat on my bed. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back against that pool wall with Flame pressing into me, telling me I needed to learn respect. I tried lying down but kept jumping at every sound outside, thinking they'd somehow found where I lived. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and made coffee, sitting at my kitchen table scrolling through my phone. Minnie had sent 3 more messages checking if I was okay, and saying she'd backed up all the video files to multiple places. The sun was barely up when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Detective Potts explained that Beer Gut was stable in the ICU with 15 stitches in his scalp and a severe concussion that would keep him hospitalized for at least a week. She said once he was medically cleared, he'd be arrested for assault and battery based on the evidence they'd collected. I tried to drive to work, but when I pulled into the parking lot and saw a group of men walking toward the building entrance, my chest got tight and I couldn't breathe. My vision went fuzzy and I had to grip the steering wheel to stop my hands from shaking. One of them glanced at my car and I locked the doors, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. I called my supervisor from the car, barely able to get the words out between gasps. She told me to take the day off and said HR would mark it as a personal emergency day. I drove home and spent the rest of the morning curled up on my couch, jumping every time a car drove past. Jonas called around noon, his voice full of apologies. He said the pool was offering to pay for counseling sessions with a trauma specialist they worked with for these situations. He explained they were reviewing all their safety protocols and wanted my input on what changes would help people feel safer. He kept saying how sorry he was that his staff hadn't protected me better. That afternoon, I tried to eat something but ended up just pushing food around my plate. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom asking if I'd seen the local news website. Someone had posted Minnie's video with my face blurred out, but you could still hear everything the men were saying. The article had over 300 comments already. Most people were supportive, saying those men deserved worse than what they got, but some trolls were saying I was asking for trouble by swimming alone. One comment said if I'd worn a normal bikini like other women, they wouldn't have bothered me. I closed the browser and turned off my phone. The next day, I forced myself to leave the house for a meeting with a victim advocate at the courthouse. She was an older woman with kind eyes who walked me through everything that would happen next. She helped me fill out paperwork for emergency protective orders against all 4 men, explaining that the orders would keep them from coming within 100 yards of me. She warned that the whole legal process could take months, maybe even a year if it went to trial. She gave me a folder full of resources for assault survivors and her direct phone number. 3 days passed in a blur of not sleeping and barely eating. I was at the grocery store trying to remember what normal people bought for food when someone called my name. 4th friend was standing by the produce section, looking smaller without his drunk friends around him. He started walking toward me saying he needed to talk, that this was all a misunderstanding. I backed away and told him he was violating the protective order. He kept coming, saying I was ruining their lives over nothing, that Beer could have died because of me. I ran to customer service and told them a man with a restraining order was following me. The security guard walked over and fourth friend tried to explain he just wanted to apologize, but the guard wasn't having it. He escorted fourth friend out while I gave a statement to the manager. The victim advocate called me that night to say fourth friend had been arrested for violating the order and would spend at least one night in jail. The therapist's office smelled like vanilla candles and had those white noise machines that were supposed to be calming. She specialized in assault trauma and spent our first session just letting me talk about what happened. When I mentioned saving Beer Gut, she helped me understand that my actions didn't mean I forgave him or that what he did was okay. She explained that I acted on instinct and training, not because he deserved saving. We scheduled twice weekly sessions and she gave me exercises to help with the panic attacks. Detective Potts called a few days later with news that made my stomach drop in a different way. 2 other women had filed reports about the same group of men at different pools around the county. One woman said Flame had grabbed her chest while she was swimming laps, and another said Gold had followed her to her car making threats. The detective said their pattern of behavior would strengthen the case significantly. She was working with the prosecutor's office to consolidate the charges. The prosecutor called the next morning to discuss the charges they were filing. Beer Gut would face felony assault and battery charges because of the severity of the attack, and the head injury he caused himself didn't change that. Gold's underwater grabbing qualified as sexual battery, which meant he'd have to register as a sex offender if convicted. Flame and fourth friend would get misdemeanor assault charges but could face jail time. The prosecutor said with the video evidence and multiple victims, they had a strong case. 2 weeks after that call, I stood outside the pool gates with my swim bag feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. My hands shook as I pushed through the entrance during senior swim hours when Jonas promised it would be quiet. The chlorine smell hit me and my stomach turned, but I kept walking toward the locker room. 3 older women were already swimming slow laps in the far lanes, and a staff member I didn't recognize stood by the shallow end watching. Jonas appeared from his office and walked over without saying anything, just nodded and pointed to lane 4 where he'd personally put up new lane dividers. I changed into my suit in a bathroom stall instead of the open area and had to sit on the bench for 5 minutes before I could make myself walk out to the pool deck. The water looked different somehow. Darker maybe. And I kept seeing that cloud of blood even though the pool had been drained and cleaned twice since then. I got in slowly at the shallow end instead of diving and started with easy breaststroke, counting each stroke to keep my mind focused. After 10 laps, my breathing got tight and I had to stop, gripping the wall while Jonas pretended not to watch from his chair. I managed 5 more laps before the shaking got too bad and climbed out, but at least I'd gotten back in the water. That same afternoon, my phone rang with a blocked number, and when I answered, a woman's voice said she was Flame's wife and needed to talk to me about dropping the charges. She said they had 3 kids and he'd lose his job if this went to trial, that I was destroying their whole family over a misunderstanding. My victim advocate had warned me this might happen and told me to hang up immediately and document the call. I texted the advocate right away and she called back within minutes, saying she'd handle the response through proper legal channels. She sent a formal letter to Flame's lawyer, making it clear that any further contact attempts would be considered witness intimidation. The lawyer wrote back claiming his client's wife had acted without his knowledge, but we all knew that was garbage. A month crawled by with nightmares and therapy sessions before the preliminary hearing date arrived at the courthouse downtown. I wore my only business suit and sat in the hallway watching other cases go in and out while my stomach churned. When they called our case number, I walked into the courtroom and saw all 4 of them sitting at the defense table in their cheap suits. My whole body started shaking and I had to grab the witness chair arms to steady myself as I sat down. The prosecutor asked me to describe what happened that day at the pool in my own words. I talked for 20 minutes about the harassment and assault, having to stop twice when my voice cracked. Minnie testified next, playing her video for the judge and explaining what she saw from her lane. 3 other witnesses also took the stand, including the teenage lifeguard who admitted he should have done more to stop them. Beer Gut's lawyer stood up and argued that his client's head injury was punishment enough for any wrongdoing. He claimed Beer had suffered permanent damage and would need months of rehabilitation just to return to normal life. The judge looked at him over her glasses and said, "Head injuries don't erase assault charges, especially with video evidence this clear." She reviewed the footage on her laptop, her face getting harder with each replay of them grabbing me. The defense tried arguing it was just horseplay between adults, but the judge shut that down fast. She bound all 4 defendants over for trial on their various charges and maintained the restraining orders. After the hearing, I started going to the pool at different times, never the same schedule twice in a row. Early morning one day, late evening the next, trying to rebuild my comfort in the water. Some of the regular swimmers recognized me from the news coverage and would nod quietly or swim in the lane next to mine without talking. One older man always made sure to be there when I swam. Never said anything, but I knew he was keeping watch. A woman who swam Masters workouts told me she was proud of me for coming back and not letting them take swimming away from me. These small gestures helped more than any of them probably realized. 2 months into the legal process, Gold's lawyer called the prosecutor to discuss a plea deal. He wanted to avoid trial and the publicity that would come with it, especially the sex offender registration requirement. After 3 days of negotiations, he agreed to plead guilty to sexual battery in exchange for no jail time. He got 2 years probation, mandatory counseling, and had to register as a sex offender for 10 years. The prosecutor called to explain why she accepted the deal, saying it guaranteed a conviction without putting me through a trial. I understood, but still felt sick thinking about him walking free even with the registration requirement. Meanwhile, Jonas had been working with the pool's board of directors on new safety policies based on our case. They installed emergency call buttons at each lane that connected directly to the manager's office and local police. Staff training now included mandatory sessions on recognizing and stopping harassment before it escalated. They posted new signs about zero tolerance for inappropriate behavior, with specific examples of what wasn't allowed. Jonas named the new policies after the case number instead of using my name, which I appreciated since I just wanted to swim without being known as that woman from that incident. Fourth friend's plea deal came through the following week after his lawyer realized the case against him was solid. During his allocution to the judge, he actually sounded sorry about what happened, saying he got caught up in mob mentality and alcohol. He admitted to pouring beer on me and participating in the harassment, accepting responsibility without making excuses. The judge gave him 6 months probation and 50 hours of community service at a domestic violence shelter. She said maybe helping abuse victims would teach him how his actions affected others. Around this time, I found a support group for assault survivors that met Tuesday nights at the community center. The first meeting was hard, sitting in that circle of metal chairs listening to other people's stories of harassment and assault. But hearing how they survived and fought back through the legal system made me feel less alone in this mess. One woman had been through 3 trials before getting justice, and she became my unofficial mentor in navigating the system. We'd get coffee after meetings, and she'd remind me that healing wasn't linear, and bad days didn't mean I was weak. Beer Gut refused all plea deals because he insisted he'd done nothing wrong, and the head injury was my fault for not saving him fast enough. His lawyer filed motion after motion trying to get the charges dropped or reduced, but the judge denied them all. The trial date got set for 3 months out, and the prosecutor started preparing me for what would be another round of testimony. She had the video enhanced and got medical experts to testify about the difference between his self-inflicted injury and the assault injuries I sustained. Beer's defense strategy seemed to be blaming alcohol and claiming he couldn't remember anything, which fell apart when the prosecutor showed the video of him very deliberately snapping my swimsuit strap and cornering me in the pool. 3 weeks later, I walked into the courtroom for Beer Gut's trial, wearing the same dark suit I'd worn to every hearing, my hands steady this time as I took the witness stand. The prosecutor had me walk through the harassment again, but this time I didn't shake when I described Beer Gut pulling at my suit straps or how he'd cornered me in the pool before his stupid backflip attempt. She showed the jury the enhanced video frame by frame, pointing out how he deliberately grabbed me underwater and snapped my swimsuit hard enough to leave the mark that was documented in my medical records. Beer Gut sat there in his cheap suit trying to look sorry, but I could see him rolling his eyes when his lawyer thought the jury wasn't watching. The prosecutor brought up the other women who'd filed complaints about him at different pools over the past 5 years, establishing a clear pattern even though his lawyer objected constantly. When the defense tried to argue that his head injury was punishment enough, the prosecutor showed medical records proving his concussion had fully healed within 6 weeks, while my therapy bills were still mounting. The jury took less than 2 hours to come back with guilty verdicts on assault and battery charges. The judge didn't buy Beer Gut's sudden remorse act during sentencing, giving him 6 months in county jail plus 2 years probation, and ordering him to pay all my therapy costs, which were already over $8,000. Flame Short's trial started the following month, and by then, his tough guy act had completely disappeared since his buddies had all testified against him to get lighter sentences. His wife had divorced him, and his employer fired him after the video went viral locally, so he showed up looking defeated before testimony even started. The prosecutor played the audio from Minnie's video where he called me those awful names and pushed me against the pool wall, and 3 other witnesses testified about seeing him throw my towel in the water and hold it down with his foot. His own lawyer convinced him to change his plea to guilty on the second day when it became clear the jury hated him, especially after they heard how he'd been the ringleader who encouraged the others to escalate. The judge gave him 4 months in jail and mandatory anger management classes, specifically stating that his harassment created the environment where the others felt empowered to assault me. With all 4 convicted, I finally felt safe enough to go back to the pool during regular hours instead of just senior swim times, though I still checked the parking lot for their cars out of habit. Jonas had the staff put up my photo in the office so all the lifeguards and desk workers knew to watch out for me, and the regulars started nodding at me in solidarity, which helped more than they knew. The victim advocate called to ask if I'd volunteer with their office since they needed people who understood the court process firsthand, and I started spending Tuesday evenings helping other assault survivors fill out paperwork and understand what to expect at hearings. 6 months after that awful day, I signed up for a master's swim meet at the aquatic center across town, my first competition since the assault. My times in practice were still slower than before, and I'd gained weight from the stress, but I needed to prove to myself that they hadn't taken swimming away from me. The morning of the meet, I threw up from nerves but still showed up and swam my events, finishing middle of the pack in freestyle but somehow winning my age group in backstroke. Minnie showed up to cheer me on, bringing homemade cookies and a sign that said, "Survivor Strong," which made me cry before my last event. We started meeting for coffee every few weeks after that, and she told me how proud she was that I'd fought for justice instead of letting them get away with it. She said sharing that video was the easiest decision she'd ever made because she knew what it was like to be harassed and have nobody stand up for you. Through Jonas, the teenage lifeguard who'd gone on break sent an apology saying he felt terrible about leaving when things got bad and asked if I blamed him. I had Jonas tell him the grown men were responsible for their own choices, and a 16-year-old kid shouldn't have to deal with drunk adults anyway. Plus, he'd tried to help when he came back, and that counted for something. At the swim meet 6 months later, I touched the wall after the 100-meter freestyle and looked up at the clock to see I'd finally beaten my pre-assault time. Standing on the pool deck getting my little plastic medal for winning my age group, I felt something shift back into place inside me. My body was mine again. Every stroke I took in the water was my choice. And those men were behind bars or doing community service while I was here swimming faster than before. The water didn't care about what happened to me or what I'd survived. It just held me up the same as always. And that's all I needed to keep moving forward. Detective Potts called me at work 2 weeks after the swim meet with news that made me sit down hard in my desk chair. She explained that our case files had been shared with other departments, and 3 more women had filed reports about similar pool harassment. The prosecutor was using our case as the main example because we had the strongest evidence and most witnesses. I took notes while she talked about how the other cases were moving forward now that there was a pattern to show. My boss walked by and saw me crying at my desk and mouthed to ask if I was okay. I nodded and wiped my face while Detective Potts told me the investigation was expanding to include other public pools in the county. She said my willingness to pursue charges had opened doors for other victims who thought nobody would believe them. After the call, I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face before returning to finish the quarterly reports. My boss called me into her office an hour later and closed the door behind us. She sat on the edge of her desk and told me she'd been watching how I handled everything since the assault. She said my determination to keep working while dealing with court dates and therapy showed real strength. Then she slid a folder across the desk with a promotion offer inside. Senior analyst position with a 20% raise and my own team to manage. She mentioned that seeing me stand up for myself had inspired other women in the office to report their own harassment issues. I signed the paperwork right there, and she hugged me before I left her office. Jonas called that afternoon while I was packing up my old cubicle to move to the new office. He asked if I'd be willing to speak at a regional pool management conference next month about harassment prevention. The organizers wanted someone who could talk about both the victim experience and the legal process. I agreed immediately because other pools needed to know how to protect their swimmers better. The conference was in 3 weeks, and Jonas said they'd cover all my travel expenses plus pay me a speaker fee. I spent the next few days working on my presentation between setting up my new office and training my team. A year passed with therapy every week and support group meetings twice a month. At the group's summer picnic, I met someone whose sister had been assaulted at a gym. He understood why I sometimes flinched when men got too close at the pool. We started going for coffee after meetings and then actual dates where we talked about everything except our trauma. He never pushed for physical contact and always asked before touching me, even just to hold hands. 6 months into dating, we went swimming together for the first time at a different pool across town. I had a panic attack in the parking lot, but he sat with me until my breathing slowed down. We made it into the water, and I managed 10 laps before needing to get out. He celebrated those 10 laps like I'd won an Olympic medal and bought me ice cream after. Some days were harder than others, and I'd have to leave the pool early when groups of men got too loud. He never made me feel weak for struggling or suggested I should be over it by now. Instead, he'd research new pools we could try or find lap swim times when it would be less crowded. The triathlon had been on my bucket list for years, but I never felt ready until my therapist suggested setting a concrete goal. I signed up for a sprint distance race 6 months out and started training slowly. Running was easy, but getting back in open water for the swim portion took weeks of practice. Race day came and I threw up twice before the start from nerves. But when the gun went off, I dove in and just kept moving forward. The swim felt endless, but I made it to the bike transition and then pushed through the cycling and running portions. Crossing that finish line with my boyfriend and Minnie cheering felt like taking back every piece of confidence those men had tried to steal. The victim advocate office called the week after the triathlon with a job offer. They needed someone to develop their assault survivor program and wanted someone with lived experience. The position paid less than my current job, but included helping other survivors navigate the system I'd learned the hard way. I accepted immediately and gave notice at my analyst job the next day. My boss understood and said she was proud of me for choosing purpose over pay. Now I swim every morning at 6 when the pool opens and the lanes are mostly empty except for serious swimmers. I help 3 to 5 assault survivors each week with paperwork and court preparation. My boyfriend and I moved in together and he installed extra locks on all the doors without me having to ask. Life isn't perfect because I still have bad days where I can't get in the water at all. But it's good in ways I didn't think were possible when I was trapped against that pool wall. The men who hurt me are living with their criminal records while I'm living with purpose and surrounded by people who actually care about my safety. Well, folks, that's gonna wrap it up for today. Hope you had fun just wondering about stuff with me for a bit. Until we cross paths again, if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.